So I wanted to address one very good question that was asked on Nectar about when string of symbols like x equals 3 or 1 equals 3 or 5 greater than y, when one of these strings of symbols is a proposition and when it's a predicate. And I actually never mentioned the word predicate in this course, but there might be other Math 8 courses that make a distinction. For this course, we will not make any distinction between predicate and proposition, because we don't need to. So the need for the distinction might arise depending on whether, depending on exactly how you construct the mathematical language. But the construction that we are going for doesn't care about the distinction. So sometimes people think about predicates as, so for us, all of these are just propositions. We're just using the word proposition to refer to anything that counts as an assertion, regardless of whether there are variables appearing in it or not. Some people insist on, or some people for their development need to refer to these kinds of propositions differently and call them predicates, emphasizing that there's this slot, the variable slot, where something can be replaced. We also will use variables for that purpose. That's the purpose of a variable in mathematics, is for it to be substituted by something else. But we will be more explicit about when substitutions are occurring and why. So for us, all of these are propositions. And I wanted to make one other point about a confusing question. And this is not exactly something that someone asked on Nectar, but I'm reframing it as a question. And it is a very confusing question. Can x be a constant? So the reason I'm posing this question is that probably you're used to seeing in math classes sometimes people use letters to refer to something, and then they'll say that that thing is a constant. For example, I don't know, if I write F equals NA as Newton's second law, then I might say this m is a constant, while the a here can vary, or something like that. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about when we say variable versus constant. So for us, because these are all letters of the alphabet, they are variables. M is a variable for our purposes. When people say m is a constant and a varies, they're talking about something different. They're not talking about grammar. They're actually talking about semantics there. They're not talking about syntax, they're talking about semantics. So when they say m is a constant, they mean literally in time. M does not change in time. A varies means it is a function of time. So this is nothing to do with the grammar of the language. It's totally unrelated. And the answer here, for us, for our language building purposes, is, well, this question is not exactly clear. To make it clear, I should put quotes around the x. There is a confusion between using a name to refer, there's a confusion between referring to something and referring to a name for that thing. So let me give you an example. Are you a pronoun? Are you a pronoun? Your answer would probably be no, right? You're a person, you're not a word. A pronoun is a kind of word. And you are not that, you're a person. But how about this question? Definitely the word you is a pronoun, right? So the difference between these two questions and the reason they have different answers is that here the you refers to, here the word you is being used to refer to what you refers to, right? On the other hand, here the word you, here we're not trying to refer to what you refers to, but rather to the word you. It's kind of like, I think one example in the notes is Germany a country? And the answer is yes, but what if I put quotes around it? Is that a country? No, that's a word, right? It's not a country. So I think this is the source of a lot of confusion regarding variables and constants. And it causes a lot of confusion when you're constructing the language. So now with this clear question, I'd say, no, it's a variable. It is a variable, just like you is a pronoun, right? And it doesn't matter whether, so in those other, in those situations that are unrelated to what we're looking at, where people use certain letters and then call them constants, like mass here, they're talking about what this refers to as being constant. They're not talking about that as being constant. So I think that can help clear up the confusion. So the answer here really just does not depend on what x is referring to. X could be referring to something that we're imagining changes in time, or something that doesn't change in time. That has nothing to do with what is meant by constant or variable here. Here it's a grammatical category. It's like saying noun or pronoun. Yeah, this is a pronoun. And one other interesting point is if I make a mark like this, so let me clear the board and make a mark. So right now, how many variables have been created when I did that? There's one variable showing up on my screen, but there's also a variable showing up on your screen. So depending on how many people are watching this at the same time, well, I guess it's not concurrent, but you get the point. By making this mark, I have created many variables, right? And the reason is that the actual pixels making up that mark are what we refer to as the variable. Like if I point to my screen, I am pointing at the variable right now. Whereas if I point to the word you, I'm not pointing at you, right? I'm pointing at the word you. So here, the x that I'm pointing at is the variable. But whatever x happens to refer to in one context or another, that's not the variable, right? If I happen to be in one conversation where x equals 3, maybe me and someone else would agree that x equals 3, but we would still say x is a variable. We would not say 3 is a variable. So it's the symbol or the marking or the sign that can be a variable or a constant, not what it's referring to.